Hello, gentlemen. I've just finished a 10-hour overnight shift at my job, and I'm sorry if I've taken a hiatus from uploading short content and you missed the YouTube shorts and the Instagram reels and the videos on TikTok. The reason why none of that has been being uploaded on a streamlined basis is because this is my phone, the iPhone XR. It takes me about 30 minutes, as is, to upload a minute-long video to TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube shorts. And that's because my phone is the iPhone XR. So courtesy of my new job, the fact that I've been putting in these overnight shifts, thank God I am getting a new phone in the mail tomorrow. We are going to be regularly uploading on schedule. All I'm doing is posting videos that I edit on my computer that I download to my phone from email. And that still is like an hour-long process if I want to get 2 posts done per day, which is something that I used to strive to do. It's way too much time to just rest in bad hardware. So I'm getting a new phone tomorrow, reestablish some normalcy in the consistency of the uploading of short content. Beowulf MMA pushes forward. Today, though, I have a very special video for you guys, the viewers. I want to recap an entire season of Dana White's Contender Series in one video upload. I'm not going to be talking about every single fight. As a matter of fact, there's going to be one whole week that I'm just going to completely omit because I quit during that week and I literally came out of retirement like TJ Dillashaw, like Jose Aldo, like Henry Cejudo, like George St. Pierre, like Israel Adesanya, like Anderson Silva, like John Jones, like Nick Diaz, like Nate Diaz, like Conor McGregor. Yeah, so week 6 is not going to be mentioned, but I'm going to go through every single fight and prospect that earned a contract that I think that we should be paying attention to going into the next year, however long, because it is numerically impossible for however many contracts were earned by the fighters through this season for there not to be some breakout star amongst the guys who were given one. So we're going to go through it right now. You heard it here first. I'm tapped in. We should be all watching the Contender Series whenever it's on. All right, so it's going to be periodic from week 1 all the way to week 10. This is where it all started, man. Baisangur Susurkaev versus Murtaza Talha. It was actually Murtaza Talha who Rodolfo Bellato got a contract out for the Contender Series by beating, so this is not the highest level of opponent. Granted, it was up a weight class. Murtaza Talha, don't be putting in no work. He is not a real Chirac Savage. But the same cannot be said for Baisangur Susurkaev. This man be posted up on O Block with the ratchet, shooting at the police and shit. He is really like that. Baisangur Susurkaev, we know that he's probably going to be something in this division. Whatever you thought about his first fight, he took it 4 days after he got his contract on the Contender Series. He is legit. I don't need to sell him at all. This is another guy who's likely going to be something in this division. Rowston, he fought with Brandon Holmes, demonstrated his really nice right hand. I think it might have been a lead hook that he actually dropped Petrosky with in his debut. But, I mean, this guy is a very powerful striker. In any event, the suit is going to be getting to a lot of finishes on the feet. Australian as well, comes from a very good gym, trains out of City Kickboxing, teammates with Navajo Sterling, teammates with Israel Adesanya. Cringe post-fight interview, but he's a W man's because he put on Israel Adesanya and alluded to his inaugural speech in the octagon after scoring his first win in the UFC as well. Rowston, it's going to be very fun to track his progression through the UFC because City Kickboxing is kind of like a mixed bag, but I think that we should be paying attention to what he's doing in any event. Manuel Exposito versus Jose Delano. Guys in the chat were calling this man Manuel Despacito versus Jose Milano Cookie, like the Pepperidge Farm joint. Jose Delano is the guy that we're talking about right now. And despite the fact that this man is a one-piece weeaboo, Jose Delano was really throwing them hoes up against Manuel Exposito. Exposito demonstrated a good chin and lots of durability. Jose Delano was really, he was putting B2A in this fight. And I'm excited to see what he does next. This is a very complete fighter. This is one of the most complete fighters to come off of the Contender Series. It's not like a young prospect where it's like, okay, we got to groom him up into a dude where, like, he can take high-level or high-profile fights. Like, this guy is probably ready for the toughest ringer that you can give to him. So he was like one step behind the Dagestani prospect, and we got plenty of those to talk about as well. Tommy Cuozzi versus Ramiro Jimenez at featherweight. Ramiro Jimenez is the guy who earned a contract between the two of these guys. Ramiro Jimenez is a lot like Kevin Vallejos, one of these like Ilia Topuria type strikers. I mean, people like to say the same thing about Kevin Vallejos, right? But in all reality, these guys are really just like solid boxers. They prefer to use their hands offensively and they mix targets. They go to the body and they come back up high. And they throw combinations by doing both of these things, mixing up the levels. So That's what makes him kind of like Ilia Topuria. The way that he goes about it is completely different, though. A majority of his offense is going to be low kicks and punches strung together, high and low. He's also a tricky southpaw as well. So, I mean, I really do like Ramiro Jimenez. He was giving Tommy Cuozzi Hershey shorts with some of the hooks that he was landing to the liver and to the other side of his body. Really nice stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing Ramiro Jimenez in the cage again. Josh Hokit at heavyweight. This is a guy who everyone talked about because he had a really cringe presser. But, I mean, he was just trying to sell himself. He was trying to be a showman, exercise some mic skills that, I mean, it's kind of subjective whether or not you do think that he is good at talking. He was able to stay relevant for a couple of weeks after he made his debut, and people are talking about him well into him actually getting his first fight scheduled. It's against some stinky, I don't know. Guilherme Uriel wasn't very good of a first opponent either for the Contender Series, which is a very doughy guy. No cardio on him. Josh Hokit was able to use wrestling in order to get the fight to exactly where he wanted it, so he could score that finish. Josh Hokit comes from LFA, I believe, or he might have even been a Bellator guy. Failed NFL player. He was bouncing in between practice squads, ended up training MMA and finding success in it because the heavyweight economy right now is so trash. But that's not to say that Josh Hokit is completely terrible at fighting. He might actually be something in this division. At the very least, it's going to be fun to see whether or not he knocks someone out or gets knocked out himself. So I'm going to be paying attention to his progression through the organization for sure. Donte Johnson versus Darion Abbey. This is the manlet. I think this was the beginning of week 2 as well. We just finished with week 1 after Josh Hokit and talking about him. This was a 225-pound catch weight. Donte Johnson is going to be fighting with Nick Klein at 185 after taking this fight. I don't know if it was short notice or what. Donte Johnson has always looked pretty blown up in all the photos that he has online of himself fighting. He had no business fighting up basically at heavyweight, 225 pounds at a catch weight. You're a heavyweight, like by the book. He still ended up scoring a crazy knockout over Darion Abbey. Darion Abbey is nothing notable. Donte Johnson may actually be something. I like these turbo manlets, so I pay attention to whenever they come around because they're special fighters in my opinion, especially whenever they're the type that can get to crazy, brutal knockouts. So Donte Johnson definitely gets a mention here as one of the more notable fighters to come off of the Contender Series Season 9. Cristian Perez versus Manuel Sousa at lightweight. Cristian Perez came to fight this night, but Manuel Sousa, there's a possibility that this is a really special fighter. This guy, after all, did knock out Marcio Hufi on the feet. And people are like, oh yeah, well, closely contested fight, and Marcio Hufi rocked him, which is true. He did have this guy on Chicken Street, but who ended up getting the knockout? That's all that really matters is outcomes, right? I mean, we can look at like, you know, Umar broke his hand in the fight against Merab, and could he win the rematch? Maybe, but who won the first fight? It was Merab. Manuel Sousa beat Mauricio Hufi via knockout, and you can find the clip, you can watch it. He got chinned, he was sleepy. Cristian Perez came out, and he looked like he was about to just smudge this guy to a decision. But within the first couple of minutes of the fight, Manuel Sousa, he wrapped up like a Kimura, and he completely flared out the arm of Cristian Perez. Super gross stuff. He was attacking this submission every single time that he ended up in full guard, bottom full guard, and then he was able to get up and then just start pinging Cristian Perez. Cristian Perez couldn't withstand the aggression from Manuel Sousa ultimately and ended up getting finished in the 3rd round. Manuel Sousa demonstrated a lot of grit, a lot of knowledge of positions on the ground, and some pretty solid cardio too. Pay attention to what he does next at 155. Abdul-Rakhman Yakhyaev versus Alik Lorenz. Abdul-Rakhman Yakhyaev is going to be in Qatar. He will fight Rafael Cerqueira, the human cattle himself. This dude is a light heavyweight fighter that I think is going to turn the game over on its head. This guy is a good matchup to fight a dude like Magomed Ankalaev. I think they have a relative skill set, wrestling, very good striking. I think that there might even be more finishing potential on Abdul-Rakhman Yakhyaev. This guy is like a more matured version of Baisangur Susurkaev, except he's up a weight class. So there's going to be less stiff competition, more flaccid competition for Abdul-Rakhman Yakhyaev to fight with. And he's going to get to finishes like crazy at 205. I'm already seeing it right now. So make sure that you're investing in Abdul-Rakhman Yakhyaev stock. He has a really fun name to say right now. Pause the video and say it, or say it with me. Abdul-Rakhman Yakhyaev, Abdul-Rakhman Yakhyaev, Abdul-Rakhman. The next fighter that we're going to be talking about is Marcio Barbosa. Damon Wilson was the guy that he knocked out cold. Marcio Barbosa has a good story, and I think that the pain of his upbringing, this dude is like crazy impoverished from the story that he told on the Contender Series. Guys have like stories about being down bad in their home countries. This dude is like from like the slums of Brazil, super young, very good at boxing. And I was talking about I used to match make the fighters at the very end of each of the recaps that I would do, and I would be like, okay, well, he demonstrated some really good boxing. Let's see how his grappling is. We don't really know. It's pretty untested. And this guy corrected me in my comment section. Thank you for that, whoever you are. You know who you are if you're watching this and you left the comment. He said, fact check, Mario Barbosa is actually like a world jiu-jitsu champion in Brazil. And like, he's a no-gi champion, so like the one that's actually relevant for MMA. Marcio Barbosa is Himothy, and he's going to be good. Because I thought he was a striker in his fight on the Contender Series. No, this man is a grappler through and through, and he's really good at grappling. But striking is just something that he can also do. The reason why I'm talking about his socioeconomic status as well is because this man was crying and talking about how his dad gave him like 100 real, which is like $20, and said, this is all I can give you, son. I need you to get that contract for the land. And he did get it, and he started bawling his eyes out because he knew what even the show and win money on the Contender Series would have meant for him and his family. So, I mean, I hope this guy makes $1 million in the UFC because he has a good story and he has really nice skills too. Marcio Barbosa, pay attention. Trent Miller versus Ryan Gandra. I just remember that this fight was kind of silly. Ryan Gandra doesn't have like an exceedingly crazy set of skills. It was just a really nice knockout that he scored over Trent Miller. This is a real like sleeper guy, honestly, because nobody's really going to be talking about him before he debuts. I think he has the potential to actually get some pretty cool knockouts or have some fun fights in the UFC. It's one of those guys. He's going to fly under the radar and he's going to do something important and people are going to be like, where did you come from? I'm making this video right now just so I can get on here and clip this portion whenever he does make his UFC debut and he wins it. And I can be like, yo, that's Ryan Gandra and I called it here. Make sure that you guys are paying attention for that moment to come because it will. I think that Ryan Gandra is going to blow our socks off with his first UFC performance. I'm not sure if the same can be said for Tommy Mcmillen in his fight against David Mgoyan. Mgoyan. This is one of Arman Sarukian's training partners. Tommy Mcmillen was supposed to lose this fight on the basis of being Sean O'Malley's training partner. And just think about what happened if Sean O'Malley fought with Arman Sarukian. I mean, there's two different weight classes that separate the two. But I mean, just think about how bad a stylistic matchup that is. Mcmillen actually demonstrated some pretty good wrestling in this fight. He had some knowledge of positions to be able to escape. He showed a lot of heart, too, because he was almost choked out cold against David Mgoyan. He had to exorcise his head all the way around his shoulder in order to escape this choke. Super nasty stuff. David Mgoyan, he just gassed out and his strike defense was bad. Otherwise, the wrestling was there for him, and he looked pretty sharp on the ground, too. Though it was a very good fight, I think that this guy is really only getting pushed, and people only really cared about the outcome of it just because of who he's co-signed by. And his gimmick is he has a Scarface tattoo and stuff. He looks like pretty decently cool for a fighter. He seems like a pretty cool guy. A fighter that, like, you know, we may be interested and inclined to support. But, I mean, comparing his skills to Marcio Barbosa, he may find himself in some trouble, even if he gets match made with guys who won contracts out of the same division this season. But that's just a testament to the depth of the UFC at this time. Tommy Mcmillen is going to be a prospect that people are going to be having on their radar. An experiment just to see how far he goes. And that's the way that I'm treating it. I'm not really expecting anything out of him. Speaking of an experiment, the 33-year-old prospect Mandel Nalo. This guy, he calls himself Rat Garbage, which is funny. Like, he calls himself Rat Garbage. He trains with GSP, who's an old training partner of George St. Pierre. Trains at TriStar Gym, coached by Firas Zahabi. This guy has everything going for him, and he's a very dynamic and electrifying striker. I like Mandel Nalo a lot. I think that he has good matchups to be made with other unks in the lightweight division, since that is an unk-rich division. He will probably chin them brutally. They got to pick the right one, though, just because the UFC is an entirely different level than getting a win on the Contender Series or whatever you were doing before then. So if they put him up against a veteran who is too crafty, he always runs the risk of getting knocked out himself. Otherwise, this guy is a very prolific knockout artist. It seems that he's going to go very far, chinning folks at the 155 division. Pay attention to Mandel Nalo. Next, we're going to be discussing Cezary Oleksiejczuk. You know what's funny? Not once have I ever properly spelled Oleksiejczuk, the last name, without searching it up on Google and then having to autocorrect it through the search browser itself. Because your phone is not going to autocorrect that last name. But I always misspell it. I get close enough to the point where the browser knows what I'm trying to get at. But Theo Haig versus Cezary Oleksiejczuk. To be fair, Theo Haig was not a good opponent. I mean, objectively, his skills were just not refined to where they needed to be in order to get a contract against anybody without putting on a horrible fight, and he wouldn't have got a contract for that. Caesary Oleksiejczuk, though, he has just really good genetics for fighting him and his brother. Mikhail and Caesary both have very good boxing, and the first rounds of their fights is where they're most dangerous. Caesary Oleksiejczuk actually showed some pretty good counter wrestling because Theo Haig is a grappler. Caesary sprawled the hell out of Theo and then started hammer fisting this dude on the side of the head. Really nasty stuff. Got to a finish super early. It was, what is the guy's name? Oh my gosh. Gary Copeland. My tired brain had a hard time thinking of that one. Gary Copeland was off them Yerkees. He was off them perk 30s in the octagon. Stopped the fight. He was playing devil's advocate for Theo Haig, saying like, oh no, Caesar Oleksiejczuk, he was landing behind the head shots. So he had to go watch it on the ref cam. Like, the octagon side footage, he had to go review that and be like, okay, well, was that a legit stop? Yes, it was, bro. This man was out cold. And Theo Haig looked pissed off. And in part, I kind of understand it because, I mean, they sold him the false hope that he might actually get to continue fighting. But why are you mad about the fact that you were literally deceased in 8K? You've just been neutralized. Caesar Oleksiejczuk, though, it kind of took a little bit away from his accomplishment, but it shouldn't because this guy is really good and he's probably going to be, like, really cold. All right, so Jack Congdon versus Jean-Paul Labozniani. Labozniani is the guy who we need to be paying attention to because Labozniani is this crazy mega jiu-jitsu man, and he showed none of his jiu-jitsu and then knocked Jack Congdon spark out in his UFC debut. It was a lead high kick off of a jab that he threw, which was really nice from orthodox stance. This guy seems to be one of those new generation of hybrid fighters who can just do a little bit of everything. I'm excited to see what he'll end up accomplishing in the UFC. Jack Congdon wasn't the craziest opponent, far from it. Labozniani, though, we're going to be paying attention to what he does next because, especially if that grappling is all that it's been hyped up to be, I want to see the full range of his capabilities in this organization for sure. After this, I don't even know which week we're on at this point. Chasen Blair versus Samuel Sanchez. Samuel Sanchez, he's my age. He's 22 years old. The guy got a crazy knockout over Chasen Blair. This week, it was like the sleepiest KO. He knocked the guy out in the first round. Like, it was a delayed reaction, too, and the guy just powered down like Windows, like, powered down noise. Sanchez, being so young, is what gets me excited to see what he's going to do in this division and in the UFC in general. At 6 foot, he has a really large frame. It may be possible for him to even go up to welterweight if he has a hard time adjusting to 155 in the UFC. The world is his oyster at 22 years old. You do whatever he wants. This guy has the explosive action potential, though. Lots of potency in his hands. Can find finishes in the cage. Good striking IQ. Good finishing IQ. I'm excited to see what we get out of Samuel Sanchez on this circuit. It's kind of coming back to me now. I think this might have been week 5 here because Steven Asplund was the main event of this week. Steven Asplund fought Anthony Garasio. Garasio was talking a lot of head, saying that Steven Asplund, granted he was an ex-500-pound man, saying, you know, he's a fat boy and all of this stuff, yakety smackety, I'm going to knock out Steven Asplund. And Steven Asplund came out and he mogged Anthony Garasio. And then he told Dana White that he would, like, suck his toes. Crazy work. Steven Asplund is one of those fighters where it's like, I guess we're doing this because there literally is nothing else to look forward to. At heavyweight, we have, what? Steven Asplund, Brando Pericic. I mean, like, Mario Pinto, at this point, we can consider him like a contender instead of like a prospect. You get 2 wins in the UFC, you're a contender. Walter Walker, I guess. These are our prospects. Like, I can count them on one hand. Heavyweight has nobody right now. So Steven Asplund may not specialize in anything. Is that a tattoo of a cat on his chest? I was not looking at that at all whenever he fought. That might be a cat. But yeah, he doesn't really specialize in anything. Looks kind of crazy. But I mean, he's what we got. So heavyweight needs prospects, and this is a prospect. Cameron Teague versus Larian Douglas at featherweight. Larian Douglas is a guy, he comes out of the Cub Swanson camp. I think this guy was cornered by Cub Swanson. Kevin Bachejos was a guy who knocked out Cameron Teague to earn his contract. They brought Cameron Teague back to get another chance to earn a contract on the Contender Series. They had him fight an even more powerful striker this time. Larian Douglas comes out and bores a hole through this guy's head, knocks him out really badly. I think this was even worse than the Kevin Bachejos knockout, which, to be fair, was a body shot. But Larian Douglas separated this man from his donkey, like, really bad. Comes from a very good stable. Cub Swanson is about as good of a puncher as you can get at 145 pounds. Larian Douglas isn't too far behind him, seemingly. But we'll need to know for sure by watching him fight. But, I mean, that definitely is an LFA title that he's holding across his shoulders, so he has that going for him heading into his UFC debut and a knockout over Cameron Teague, which was gory. Brian Zerker, I mean, dude, it's so hard to get fraud checked on the Contender Series, but Brian Zerker somehow found a way to do so. I saw a post from a while ago talking about how Brian Zerker is going to be next up. This is a Mexican fighter who's allowed to train with Khabib and Nim. And I didn't really know much about Murtaza Magomedov. Murtaza Magomedov is actually part of that camp as well. Or at least he's done training camps with Khabib. He's tapped in with all the different Dagestan champions. Back whenever Magomed was still holding a belt, he took a photo with Magomed's belt over his shoulder, and they were smiling and hitting one of these numbers. Brian Zerker, it just seemed like he didn't know what he was doing out there. He forgot what to do with his hands, man. He forgot his script. Like, the camera started rolling, and he was like, line? And then Murtaza Magomedov just knocked him out cold. He's probably going to be great in this division. He's probably going to have good fights. He's probably going to get to finishes. This could be a guy that you use to terminate all of your boring fighters and just feed them to Murtaza because he'll for sure knock them out or sub them. I don't see this guy actually getting to many decisions, even though his last name is Magomedov. Next, we have Danny Barbier versus Mantas. Oh, Gandra to Vicious. All right, so look, man. Mantas, we'll just call him. This is the guy who earned the contract. He had a crazy fight with Danny Barbier. Danny Barbier, he was like behaving like a skinwalker after he was getting punched. This man was making the craziest body jerk reactions after he was getting hit with like the big punches of Mantas. Mantas, though, is a Lithuanian guy. Comes from the same country as Modi B. Even though Modi B is a Brit, he lives in England and has a British accent. Mantas Gandra to Vicious. This guy is a tried and true Lithuanian man, like Kristaps Porzingis. I think he's from there. The guy is cold. He's going to be a nice addition to middleweight as a striker. Grappling, I mean, the grappling, I'm not going to say is not untested because he was the one who initiated wrestling. And yeah, Danny Barbier did stand up after the first takedown was shot, but that was all used to set up the knockout. So this man might just be one of them hybrid fighters who's able to use grappling to set up his striking and his striking to set up his grappling. I'm very interested to see what Mantas ends up accomplishing in the UFC. Very nice set of skills that he displayed on his Dana White Contender Series performance. All right, we're getting towards the end here because I actually do remember these fights now. Like, vividly, at least. I remember all the fights, but they're kind of like a haze. After 10 weeks of working these overnight shifts and also making sure to do these streams and watching the events, things are getting a little bit fuzzy, man. I'm not going to lie to you. But we have Curtis Campbell versus Dimbasek. Curtis Campbell, he's the real fighting nerd. This guy is the real deal fighting nerd, Curtis Campbell. Guy has the craziest, funky Christmas story glasses you've ever seen. He calls himself the Pink Panther, which is kind of dorky. And then whenever he fights, he gives himself like the pineapple, like front ponytail at the front of his head, man. And it looks so ridiculous. I said sitting here with my head shaven clean after you guys subscribed to me with a full head of dreads. But hey, man, this guy still did what he did against Dimbasek, and he fancies himself a grappler too. And yes, grappling was a facet of his game plan that led him to get to a finish, but it wasn't a submission, bro. It was a TKO. Dimbasek tried to rely on his hand being down to make him a downed opponent, but no. Movsar Evloev ruined that for all of you guys who wanted to just cheat the rules a little bit and cheese. Curtis Campbell delivered some really nasty knees, which flash KO'd Dimbasek. He kind of played chicken a little bit, thinking that he would get 5 minutes so that there would be a point deduction or something, and that landed him in a real deal of trouble once the ref was like, no, that was a legal strike. And then he started getting followed up with punches. The fight was over before it started. Curtis Campbell's a savage. Let's see what he does in the organization. At featherweight, which is a stacked division, I think he's going to be a welcome addition. The same can be said about Christopher Alvidrez. He fought against Eliezer Kubanza. Christopher Alvidrez doesn't do anything exceedingly well. The Goat Shed, though, is a camp of Aljamain Sterling, and he trains there. I think that's in Miami. He comes from California, though. I remember that much because his hometown is a city where I've done my college internship in journalism. It's a place called San Pedro, and these are some mean streets, man. Lots of homelessness, lots of drug addiction. This man said that they were growing up without food to eat in the house, and had a bunch of siblings, and he had a kid at the time of fighting on the Contender Series. This guy is a pretty good dude because after he beat Eliezer Kubanza, he apologized to him and just like because he knew what the moment meant to both of them. He's like, I'm sorry that it had to be me, but it had to be me. Which I mean, respect, dude. Like that's class. But I mean, yeah, I mean he can box. He's pretty good at wrestling. His boxing is probably his best asset, but is he the best boxer? No. But is he also 28 years old and has a lot of room to grow still? Yeah. So, I mean, he has that working for him. It's not like this guy's like close to 35. 2 more years before 30 is still a lot of time. If you haven't even done any work in the UFC yet, you can do a lot of fights in 2 years. You can get a lot better in 2 years as well. We've seen a lot of fighters hit their strides like after turning 30 to where like they weren't really doing much before they hit the big 3-0 and then just went on an absolute tear then. This guy's still pretty fresh into his martial arts career. 1 loss. He's moving on to 7. Everybody either has 1 more win or loss from whatever they have inside of the charts here, but I just have it here for reference. Christopher Alvidrez. It was a cool knockout that he scored over Eliezer Cubanza, and Cubanza was expected to get a finish over him, so I'm going to be focused on Christopher Alvidrez, maybe not refreshing my feed at the top of every hour to see what his next scheduled fight is going to be, but I'm going to be excited whenever he makes his debut on some Apex fight night for sure. Vitor Ferreira Costa versus Damian Pinas Pascal. Vitor Ferreira Costa was the most memorable part about this fight because of how erratic he was moving his like limbs. This guy was like, seen that one video of the kids fighting in the bathroom and like the kid literally does this and then he slaps the other guy? It was literally like some SpongeBob, like it was cartoonish the way that Vitor Ferreira Costa's guard was so open and he was just flailing around like a wacky wavy inflatable tube man. Damian Pinas, aside from the fact that, I mean, his last name is Pinas, which is just hilarious. This guy knocked out Vitor Ferreira Costa. People were talking about his footwork being a concern of theirs, but whenever you have that type of power, you can get away with having bad footwork for a little bit. Jamal Hill was able to make it work. I still don't think that Diego Lopez has the best footwork, but he has other skills as well that just kind of mitigate the need for him to be able to move laterally or even forward and backwards better. Damian Pinas didn't get to show all of his skills. He is a very clinical striker, though. So there's only really one way to find out what he's going to accomplish, and that's just letting time tell us. Louis Jourdain versus the guy they called Magno Diaz. This guy and the last two that we talked about that were Brazilian, they were each fighting nerds, and this was a shutout on this night. The fighting nerds are done, dude. That week of the Contender Series hurt their stock so bad because this would have been an opportunity for them to get 2 new players into the game. The fighting nerds are finished. Louis Jourdain is the brother of Charles Jourdain. This guy fights, I said it in my recap of that week as well, he fights like he watched 8 hours of Ilia Toporia's highlights on a repeat for an entire month. And I was like, I can do that. It's all low kicks, it's all boxing. And hell, if he can do that at a very high level. This guy is a really solid low kick and his hands are really crisp. But it was his work on the ground that ended up helping him get to a finish. This guy is really good at scrambling, really good at navigating his way through transitions and jiu-jitsu scrambles to make sure that he gets to dominant positions. He ended up taking the back on a very tired Magno Diaz and ended up sinking in a rear naked choke after he himself had almost gotten RNC'd. He was able to scramble, able to get on top full guard, pressure Magno Diaz back to his feet, take the back once they hit the ground again, get to that beautiful, I think it was like a 3rd round submission. Louis Jourdain actually had a pretty long fight on the Contender Series. It wasn't like painfully long. It was really fun to watch. But yeah, he did get to show a lot of his skill set. I think that he's somewhat relative to his brother, especially at bantamweight. We don't really know what Charles Jourdain is. I think he's going to lose to Davey Grant. Let's see how well that ages. But Louis Jourdain might be one of them, man. I'm not going to lie to you guys. All right, so now we're going on to the last week. I do remember these names because we had just got done watching this event. All right, so Wesley Schultz. This guy comes out. He has like a really long background in collegiate style wrestling. He basically spladled Mario Mingaj, and then he ended up getting to a Suloev stretch on some like Zabit timing. It was lit. Perfect performance. No level of danger was he ever in. Just came out and farted on this guy, no problem. Super easy for him to do. And obviously he's not going to be able to do the same thing up against the greater opponents in the organization. But I mean, against a guy like Jackson McVeigh, who Bruno Ferreira was able to like speed run on the ground, maybe he'd be able to Suloev stretch that guy. It'd be really funny to see if this would be like a signature submission for him or something that he would attempt again against another person. If he just starts Suloev stretching the entire 185 division, that would be funny. I want to see who he can and cannot Suloev stretch. So yeah, keep an eye on Wesley Schultz. He earned a contract yesterday as I'm recording this. Freddy Vidal fought, I think it was week 3 of the Contender Series. He won his fight via round 3 submission, and it was a very boring fight, but he took the fight on short notice, and he's from Serra Longo. Longo's MMA right there. And so Dana White was like, we'll have you back on the last week, and we'll get you a new opponent. You can prepare, you can make weight. But that fight was horrible. Dana White told him, because he talked to all the fighters at the very end of the program as he was giving the contracts. He said, Freddie, that was a really bad fight, but what we're going to do is have you come back and then we'll give you another stab at getting a contract on the Contender Series. So he was like, bet, I'm going to lock in, make this weight. We're going to have a better performance next time. Did he have a better performance? No. He came out and started doing the exact same thing that he did to the first guy that he fought, just pinning him against the cage, stinking it up. Levi Rodriguez started bombing this man up against the cage. And Levi Rodriguez looked like such a goober, even in his walkout. And all the photos that I could see, I was like, dude, this guy looks like a baby, man. He literally looks like Boss Baby, Brazilian Boss Baby. And he has like a funny story too. This guy like filibustered at the very end of winning the fight whenever he got to go backstage and talk to Lorosenko. This guy went on and on and on and on. But one of the funniest things that I've heard about his story is that in his debut, he made like t-shirts, like custom tees for his team that said like Levi Rodriguez BJJ black belt or something whenever he had like no grappling, just so that the other guy wouldn't shoot a takedown on him. And so he could just knock him out because he's always been a good striker. He looked like he was about to let Freddie Vidal get the fight to the ground for free, but didn't end up going that way. He ends up reversing the positions, knocks out Freddie Vidal. Dana White, he was talking to Levi Rodriguez in the cage and he said, "Thank you, you saved all of us. He was stinking it up in here." Dana White has made a villain out of Freddie Vidal after making that comment. Because imagine if that were you, dude. Like, that would make me want to plunge a dagger into my chest, dude. The last fight that we're going to talk about, Juan Diaz versus Juan Il. People are going to talk about it in the comment section too from this week. It's like Mercalli or something. Yusuf Zalal's homeboy, he came back in his fight. I didn't like that fight. I thought it was like not at the very highest level. I mean, it was a cool comeback. But I mean, I think the guy who ended up losing via knockout looked better than him for most of the fight. I mean, that's the nature of fighting, dude. You could be losing and then you just, one punch does it, you know? One shot is all you really need. But I thought that both of them looked bad at certain points of the fight. I thought it was more akin to like a World Star hip hop fight. I feel the same way about Martinelli versus Volodin, because I didn't even mention that one either. But dude, Volodin versus Martinelli, I didn't like that fight personally. I know that people are going to be like, "Oh, you contrarian, it's just bleed out here." But dude, honestly, I feel like that was a Bellator fight. That was a Cage Fury's FC fight. That was not a UFC fight. And those guys are going to have 30-minute long careers if they fight like that in the UFC. They're going to get chinned. They're going to get blasted if they fight that way in the actual organization, and they're not applying some type of IQ to these fights and are just focused on being entertaining. We're going to love it, right? But I mean, they're not going to win. They're just going to become Michael Chandlers, each of them. Volodin looks like he needs to go down to flyweight too, because he was significantly undersized to be fighting a guy like Martinelli, who I mean himself wasn't really the shortest bantamweight either. But yeah, I mean, people are going to feel the way they're going to feel about that one. Dana White himself is like, "Yo, that was one of the best fights I've ever seen in my life." It was a good fight. But I mean, that's not to say that a guy like Malcolm Wellmaker, who hasn't been tested at all and has also come off of the Contender Series, wouldn't chin both of them in 30 seconds. Because I genuinely believe that he would. If you think I'm hating, Sokyanan. Go watch MMA Guru, bro. I don't care. Anyways, Juan Diaz versus Juan Il. Juan Il. I made a meme as we were watching this fight. I was like, "I don't know, you guys. I think I got Juan Il." This guy was just kind of getting lulled to sleep on the feet by Juan Diaz. Juan Diaz was mixing up the grappling with the striking. And then at the very end of the second round, it was a buzzer beater. He punches in a spinning elbow. And this was the fourth spinning elbow knockout of the entire Contender Series history. Flattens Juan Il. Steals the contract. Otherwise, it was a pretty boring fight. But that was a pretty notable moment. So the fact that he does have that understanding of distance management to be able to land a spinning elbow after throwing it makes him a unique fighter. So we're going to pay attention to what he does. And yeah, that's going to be all of the fighters and fights that I liked from this season of the Contender Series. All the best prospects that I think are going to actually make a difference by being added to the UFC. These guys are going to be in UFC 6, some of them, which is a crazy thought. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you made it to this point in the video. And if you disagree with any of my takes, lick my balls.